Well, here we are. Kay, John, good to see you.
Yeah.
Here we are down here at the beach Stube, the wine room as they call it. Turner Hall, and had a little conversation about cheese making, farming, and back in the old days for historic cheesemaking center. Today's November 14th, 1995. And John, I understand that you were born or you grew up in a cheese factory?
Yeah, I was born in October 31st, 1934 over in a little hospital over in Darlington in Lafayette County. It used to be up by the library. And then my folks were on the Lycan Cheese Factory, that's east of Darlington there. What's that road there that goes past it? Is it M? Anyways, between Darlington and Wyoda there. And I was there until 54, I believe. That's when Dad quit. And I can always remember Dad, they had the old line shaft in there and used the gasoline engine yet in the cheese factory. I remember in the wintertime we used to Tuschers used to get together over to Grandpa's, and the folks used to have a little box on a pair of skis. They used to pull me and my sister over there. That was always quite a thrill. And the snow was deep then too. Yeah. And the snow used to really be deep. It used to be up as high as the telephone wires there.
Well, you know, the Tuschers were pretty well noted for cheese making. God, there's a lot of generations in there. Can you maybe help me a little on that?
Yeah. My grandpa Jake Tuescher, he was a cheesemaker, and he was on the Lycan factory. I don't recall the number of years my dad said, and then my dad was there. And all between my grandpa and my dad and my Uncle Wally and myself, there's over 100 years of Tuschers that made cheese.
And Ed Schmidt.
Yeah, then of course he was married to be my dad's sister then. Yeah, and then of course Wally's boy Joe, he was included there in the cheese.
There at north-south way.
Yeah.
Where Wally made cheese. And Mr. Schmidt, Gus Gusht, as they used to call him, is the one that was one of my first wrestling instructors.
Oh.
He used to be quite a wrestler.
Yeah.
Swiss wrestling, that is. Gusht or Gus. Very fine man. He always seemed to me, always talk principle.
Oh, yeah.
Seriousness. And,
yeah.
Everything, there wasn't too much laughing. Everything was serious.
Yeah.
And he was still swimming across Beckman's Lake in his 80s.
That used to go down there and have a picnic, and Gusti always used to have to swim back and forth at Beckman's Lake there, Yeah, then when I was growing up in the Lycan factory, I was quite young going to high school, and I know I never had a driver's license at the time, and Dad asked me if I could pick up the milk from the farmers, and I said sure. So I picked up the milk. I'll never forget, Punk Mullen used to be the Lafayette County patrolman, and by golly, he had to come out and talk to Dad because give him heck because I was too young to drive.
How old were you then?
Oh, I can't remember really, John. Maybe
16?
No, I wasn't 16. I think probably 15 or so. Yeah.
I think you had to have a driver's permit.
A permit or something like that.
16, but you couldn't get it at 15.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, that was one of my fond memories there. Yeah.
Well, they taught you how to work early. That was one of the ethnic attributes I think that the Swiss had, or many that came to this country, the immigrants, because they came here and had to work hard in the Depression years and came to succeed. And it wasn't all that bad, I don't think. But so many of them say they had to leave home at 8th grade to go to work. And just like you started when you were a young boy. Well, did you work? Well, there wasn't much you could do in the cheese factory there when you were that young, but did you have to wash kettles or lids?
Oh yeah, I always had to wash the kettles and lids, and it was always my job to fill the stoker up. When Dad, I used to think that was quite a thrill. He used to get a trainload of coal, fill up the big coal bed with coal. I always thought that was something, you know. Yeah.
What about those flues?
Yeah, they always had to clean the flues too, yeah. That was quite a job. Yes, sir.
How often did you clean them? Every night or?
No, I think we only cleaned about once a week, yeah.
You had a pretty clean boiler. Then.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
didn't push it too hard.
Yeah, I'll never forget the time Dad put in a bigger boiler that time. That's when Gullingers were at Mineral Point that time. I remember going up there with him to look at that boiler he was getting. And by golly, they put the rivets in by hand that time. I'll never forget that, yeah.
Who bricked it in then?
I believe Fritz Koenig bricked it in that time, yeah. Remember Fritz Koenig? He was quite a boiler man here in town.
What size man was he?
Fritz? Oh, Fritz was a big man.
But how did he crawl through that hole? Did he have to crawl through that hole?
Yeah,
Remember that?
Yeah, because he worked on ours then.
Yeah.
Sure. How he could get through, those guys, it seemed like all the boiler men had a kind of a stomach on them, if I may put it
Yeah.
that way. But they either suck it in or whatnot, but I could see him crawling through that hole yet to that opening to get it bricked in. Well, that's quite an experience. And you were saying that you had a gasoline engine that runs no electricity, I suppose, huh?
Yeah, I think we had electricity, but then just to make the cheese, though, Dad, I remember he had the gasoline engine. He always had to start that up. And then everything was with the pulleys, run the stirrers and the wave pump and the separator. Everything was.
It was on a shaft.
Then he modernized and then he went all electricity. Yeah.
I suppose in your mind you can still hear that shaft going around and belts.
Yeah.
Slap some of them,
Yeah.
slap, and they'd have to.
Yeah. Then they put that belt dressing on. I remember that too. Yeah.
And it really stuck for a while there.
Yeah.
Now that was quite a thing. Everything up to box room, they all went upstairs to box room, and
Yeah.
probably one of the reasons was electricity wasn't dependable. I know where we were at. Any storm that came along, bang, you was done.
That's true, John. Because I remember it was the REA out there. Like you said, a little blow of wind, there'd be no power. Yeah.
Well, Kay, how did you come into this picture?
Well, we met each other in 1957 and were married in January 58. And he had just gotten out of service in 57. And we lived in an apartment in town while he worked for Joe Mutz in the cheese factory for the first 6 months. And from between January, then in July, we moved out to the Gutzmer factory, took over the Gutzmer factory.
At the Munster factory, what factory was that on? Or just
Mutz. Joe Mutz was at the West
West
Clarno
Clarno,
factory.
West Clarno.
Oh, okay.
He was
South
a
of
cheese
town.
maker.
South of town.
And actually, you had worked for him before you went into service, and then again when you got out of service.
Yeah, Dad had quit in 54, and Kenny Schumacher bought him out. And then I worked for Kenny Schumacher, and then of course he just bought in there, and he said he couldn't afford to pay me at the time. So then I left, and I went to work for Eric Sickenthaler, then up by Yellowstone.
What factory was Kenny at?
Well, Kenny I can't
Was that
remember.
over there by Seymour Corners?
Yeah, he was over there. The factory he was on before he bought Dad out was down there by the golf course at Garnet.
Yeah, okay.
I don't remember what the name of that
I
was.
don't know. But,
And then he bought my dad out, and then
Darlington Golf Course. There.
Yeah.
Okay, so then he went over to this factory.
yeah, and so then I
What was the name?
well, he bought my dad out at the light.
Light,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
And then so then I went up. What the heck? Was it the Yellowstone factory up there by Yellowstone Lake? Eric Sickenthaler was the cheesemaker there, and I worked for him until fall, and then I went to work for Joe Mutz, and then in January of that year, in 1955, I went into the service center. And I was in the service from
Korea.
no, I didn't. It was unfortunate, John. I never got. I signed up to go overseas, and I never got to go overseas. I was down in Texas, and went to. We had med school down there, and I signed up to go to overseas, and all of us had signed up. They sent us back to Fort Leonard, Missouri. So we got back to Fort Leonard, Missouri. We all worked in the kitchen. Yeah, some of us baked early in the morning, and some cooked, and so I stayed there my whole time in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Then I got out in January of 57.
Well, you knew for sure how to clean the equipment anyhow. Yeah, they didn't have to teach you how to do that, did they?
No, but we had a lot of good times. In fact, this summer, once I got home one afternoon and the telephone rang, and this guy says, "John, you remember me?" Why, I said, "I sure don't, Kenny." And here was one of the fellows I was in the Army with. Yeah, and I said, "Well..."
In the kitchen?
Yeah, and I said, I can still remember he had a 46 Ford. And of course, we had a lot of good times. And of course, when you're younger, you used to drink a little beer, and that's what we did. We sure had a lot of good times with that, yeah.
Worked hard and played hard.
Yeah.
Okay, then, now moving along, and now you're married and you're working down here at West Claremont.
Well, then he decided he wanted to be a cheesemaker on his own.
I see. All right, Kay.
So we bought into the Gutzmer factory between Woodford and Browntown in June or July of 1958, yeah. And when we got there, we moved out there. Now, I was a country girl. I was a farm girl. Nothing prepared me for this. The hired man came with the factory for the first couple of weeks, and we were sitting at the dinner table one day, and he announced to me that as of Saturday, the hired man would no longer be there, and I would be helping him take out cheese. And I said, "Well, how would we be doing that?" "Well, you better come downstairs and watch." And his dad had helped him a little bit, and I was supposed to hold his feet while he went in to dip the cheese. And then he told me if I ever dropped him, I might as well start right up the road because he'd be right behind me. Also, I should add that I probably cried a lot the first year we were married. Well, anyway, so we get to the point.
So then you did hold his feet like that?
Oh yeah, well, maybe once or twice I held his feet until the day I dipped him. He went into the vat and went into the kettle, and that afternoon he made a tea bar. To hold his feet, and I never had to hold his feet again.
Well, you know, later on, did you ever take it out together, or?
No, I always took cheese out alone, John. Yeah.
Well, that was an art, you know, you had to slip that right.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and,
Yeah.
it's surprising me how many people that have submerged into this whey, as we call it,
Yeah.
the curds and whey.
Yeah.
And of course, we just stirred her back up and took her out again,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and then the first year we was there,
Got a good flavored cheese.
first year that we was there, unfortunately the boiler was lined up. We never knew it from the previous owner. Of course, they're talking about Fritz Koenig. They had to have him out to reflue the boiler that time. And talk about Fritz, he crawled in that little hole there and got the job done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those boilers, those were touchy things, you know what I mean? If they got hot and there wasn't enough water, and of course, everything was ran manual, you had to keep that water level yourself until automation, or this new technology came in to where they had automated pumps. But they had the injector, right? And,
Yeah.
inject the water and always run back to the boiler room.
Yeah.
One other thing, that boiler room in some of the old factory was the toilet also. It was either that or the coal bin. It had many uses, but it was always warm in there. It dried your clothes if you needed something clothes, you washed any clothes.
Yeah.
All right, so Ma's, and then you watched the thermometer or whatnot, or just?
Yeah, it got so that actually I could do just about anything, including washing out the bulk truck.
Yeah.
You know, because it got to the point when he would go out and pick up the bulk milk then, and I got everything going in the factory, dumped milk, and you know, just really kept moving
And
with
save
it.
the wages of a hired man.
Well, yes, we had a few of those that were crazy too.
That was one of the problems, not one of the problems, but it was another chore, as I might say, to board these hired men, because they had different personalities and they had different habits, and there always was somebody else there. I know, like in my family growing up, you know, we had sometimes one hired man and later on two, and It kind of took the privacy from the family away, you know.
We were
We
for-
really
we were fortunate.
didn't
We
have that
never-
too many
we
times.
We didn't have to board them, you know, we always hired local kids, you know, that could come.
The first winter we were there, we were snowed in for 5 days. It got to the point where he and one of the other farmers, Jordan Township didn't have their own plow at that time. And so if you were snowed in, you were snowed in. We were on a side road off of the county trunk, you know, just on a township road. And I can remember walking up to the top of the hill one day to see if there might be anybody else alive in the country. But he and one of the farmers then had to carry milk cans on their back out to the main road, and then to get to some of the farmers who were running out of cans or places to put the milk. You know, it was really a kind of a big problem there.
We always had to wait for Plain County whenever they had at that time, they always opened up their roads, and then they always used to come out in Jordan Township and open up the roads. So that spring, when Marion Lewis was still alive, he always reminded me that they had a town board meeting, and I went down to the town board meeting, and I got a little hot. The next fall, we had our snowplow then. Yeah.
And of course, they kept the road open in the winter when I was pregnant.
Yeah.
Well, how many children did you have then?
We have 3 children,
3 children. They're all grown up. And
all grown up and gone, yeah.
nobody's cheesemakers.
No?
No, nobody. But we have some very good pictures of our daughter polishing kettles.
Well, you'll have to bring them
They had to-
to our historian.
Yeah. Hey, they got them, didn't
Yeah,
they? I think
they're over
so.
Dennis Dalton's there, yeah.
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 But they had to help. They had to do their thing too, you know. But
Yeah, the boys, Christie's, that was her job to polish kettles, and the boys, they had to go back, and we always sold our cheese adorns, and they had to go back and make the cardboard boxes for me to put the cheese in all the time.
Well, your dad made wheels.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
did he tub them to home, or?
No, he never tubbed them at home, John, no. He always, we never did, I remember that, he always sold the boards, and Ernie Lawker used to always, he worked for boards, and he used to come around and
Do the grading?
and yeah, and then I'll never forget, the boards used to throw a big party every year for all the cheesemakers, and Dad always took me there, and I'll never forget the time once, I don't know how in the world it could ever happen, but somebody had left a brush they took out of a wheel of Swiss. I'll never forget that. Yeah.
That's a lot of things can happen.
Yeah.
And we were pretty healthy too at that time. Of course, the brush was clean.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of cleaning. That's one thing that people, mostly especially the Swiss, were known for being emphatically clean.
Yeah.
I mean, it was taught there, and of course, cheesemaking you did, and I really don't remember too much of a dirty factory. But, I remember one cheesemaker said, the inspector says you got a crack in the floor. Well, he said, yeah, but it's clean, ain't it? I said, well, the inspector says, yeah, but you still got to fix it. Well, he said, change the crackers, I don't make the cheese on the floor, and I make it in the kettle. So he thought as long as it was clean, it was all right.
I'll never forget the time Cletus Cantor was a state inspector, and he'd come out, and Kay's younger brother, he used to come out and help us. And he was looking around, he really couldn't find anything wrong. He'd go back in the cellar there, and he was looking around, and I had some unused cheese boxes up above it. Her brother went up there, and by golly, the inspector found some cheese mites in. So then we had to wash all the cheese boxes in. But I'll never forget that Jimmy found the cheese mites for the inspector.
Yeah, and those, you know, going way back and not saying that's just the way it was, but I remember when they had cheddar, you know, that I didn't know what they were, but it was like dust around there, and they washed that off, and that's went with when they cured the cheddar. And of course, today we got vacuum and paraffin and so on and so forth. And yes, and those are the things too. I mean, a lot of inspectors, and he was not very popular man.
No, but we always got along good with him, though, yeah.
But you needed them too. I mean,
Yeah.
They came along with these lights where you can see them and so on and so forth. Well, your dad made wheels, you say?
Yeah, Dad always made wheels, yeah.
And then, but,
You made a few of them too.
I made, one year I made a few wheels too, and then, I sold them to Darwin.
So it was Bob Marty, wasn't it?
Bob Marty there, yeah, the one that sounded made a few.
and who was Bob with?
Wasn't that Capital Cheese
Capital
over
Cheese,
there by
right over
Reinhardt?
here by the,
Reinhardt Miller's there, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that was back probably in the late 60s.
It was somewhere in the 60s.
60s, yeah.
Because there were still quite a few independent cheese dealers yet.
Right, a lot of them around at that time.
All right, moving right along. Now, when did you decide to leave the factory, or where did you go from the next step?
Well, we stayed at the Gusmer Cheese Factory until September 1 of 1971. We decided to leave. The reason our decision was to leave was account of the DNR. The farmers had, they put the big, buried a great big tank for the sewage, and we used to have to pump it out and haul it away. And I guess that's the point that got me is at the
When he'd have to come home and throw his clothes in the boiler.
and so I decided to leave then, John. That was the reason and kind of the sewer problem. When I told the farmers I was leaving, well, they said, if you leave, we're going to close the factory down. They didn't want anybody else there. So that's what happened, and then we had a sale then in October.
Well, that's what happened. Technology comes along. They closed some of the factories when they got smaller and larger, and then of course the regulations.
Yeah.
And some either had to adhere to it or spend the money, and each time they took finances, and it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
And like a lot of these farmers say, God, I don't know. I remember with our affluent, when I was a young boy, it was the 30s, went down through the field. There was a creek there. Well, the puddles, I scooped it up with the water and put it down the gopher holes, catching it.
Yeah.
And one fellow says, well, Chong, he said, they talk about that stuff going into the creek or the river, but he said that's where the fish are.
Yeah.
And he says, even them fellows now that holler about it, they use fish bait.
Yeah.
They use cheese,
right.
use cheese for fish bait.
Yeah.
And but it became a problem. It was the volume, really.
Yeah.
And it had to be. But sometimes those problems weren't solved right away. A lot of those things, they came and said, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then technology had to move far enough ahead to show you what you could do. I remember one time when the whey plant closed up down there, I'm just saying these things so somebody else knows too here. But the whey plant closed up down there, DNR said down there in Browntown, you're closed. Well, they said they were all spending, I forget how many, over a couple $100,000. And he said, well, we're not spending it. Well, there's these factories all hauled away, or they were picking it up, picking the way up, and all these factories from within 10 days, maybe they had to find a place of their way.
Yeah.
Where'd they go? Out in the fields, the ditches, the quarries,
Yeah.
The DNR didn't solve the problem to say, here, look, let's work on this and see what we can make a transition. Bang, they just come with the hammer, which sometimes I think is, problems can be solved today.
Yeah.
But really, when you saw that stuff put on the fields, you grew a pretty good crop too.
Yeah.
Now they're all doing that again.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, so then you moved back to town, or you moved to town then, did you?
No, we had bought the house. We talked about it in the spring. We had bought the house where we are now, south of town here, John. And then she was working for Swiss Colony, and I was kind of undecided really what I was going to do. And so then Frank Mahalik, he was with Rural Mutual Church, and he persuaded me to sell insurance. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try, and I enjoyed it. So from 71 until April of 73, I was with Rural Mutual Church, and then there happened Wendell Bronco down to the post office. He was a Route 1 carrier, was looking for a sub, and I thought, well, that'd be kind of a good part-time job. So I became Wendell Bronco's sub down the post office
And this is right here in
Monroe. And then in the June of 1977, when Wendell retired, I got the mail route, and I've been the carrier of the mail route ever since.
Well, fine. And Kay, what are some of the good things you remember about the cheese factory?
Well,
Hard work.
Hard work, always hard work. No vacations, really. We enjoy what we do now along that line. It was a pretty good place to raise the kids, actually. I mean, they got a taste of the hard work too. But we were together as a family, you know, most of the time, probably more so than when we moved down to the other house. The kids raised St. Bernard dogs. There's some good stories there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they even had a few pigs in the backyard at one time, too.
Yeah.
And, of course, that all came to an end the day we came home from dancing lessons, and he was chasing them around with a 2x4 because they'd gotten out.
Yeah,
The pigs went to market shortly after, and money went in kids' savings accounts, but...
You were born and raised on the farm. Any interesting stories you can tell me from being on the farm?
Well, there again, I was the oldest and had 3 younger brothers, and we had a really good time growing up. You know, we made our own fun, and I think kids don't do that today, you know, nearly as much. They have to sit in front of a television or something, but we had a creek to play in, and we had always had a dog or two, you know. And one of the big things that we really had a good time with was when the June bugs came out, and we would be out by the milk house smashing June bugs in the twilight. I mean, they're just crazy things like that. But you know,
And you helped in the barn.
Oh yes, and because I was the oldest, you know, I was the first one out there. Although the brother next to me was probably driving tractor at the age of 7. You know, lots of things like
And you
that.
drove tractor too? Then?
Well, no, my father really didn't believe, my mother never drove, and my father really didn't believe in women driving cars, and so I did not get my driver's license until he and I were going together. And maybe that was a good thing, because my brothers always like to tell the story about one afternoon when we crawled in all 4 of us kids crawled in the car, and father was sleeping on the Davenport, and I was supposed to be the driver, and I ran into the corn picker. Backed it into the corn picker. In fact, they all bailed out. It was a 4-door car. In fact, it was an old green Kaiser. And they all bailed out and left me to go tell father there was a dent in the car. Yeah, well, they weren't going to tell him. I had to do that. So.
Well, you know, Rita, that wasn't an oddity as much as, you know, I know several families that the woman didn't drive. Her place was to home, and that's before, you know, equal rights came along, or whether there's this new movement, and she was accepted it, you know, I mean, because when it came time to drive, that was his privilege to kind of an honor to take her to town and bring her back, and I know several women in that age group that I know didn't drive a car, and were satisfied without it. Today we came without it, I'm sure. Well, now, moving along, anything else? Otherwise,
Yeah,
I don't know
some of the other memories back at the cheese factories, Kay's probably forgot it, but I remember when she used to be upstairs cooking or cleaning or maybe even resting, and I needed her downstairs.
I'll never forget it. No!
I used to rap on the water pipes with a hammer, and that was her signal to come down.
But then we got more modern. He fixed up a buzzer. And so now he could buzz me, and oh God, I hated that buzzer. Oh, I just hated that buzzer. But anyway, he would buzz me, and you had to cross then I'd go to the top of the steps. You had to cross the packing room,
Sure.
you know, to get to the top of the steps, and then he'd be standing at the bottom of the steps saying what he needed or whatever. And this one day, you know, I ignored it as long as I could, and then I started running across the packing room. We had a little Chihuahua dog. And as I opened the door at the top of the steps, that dog, I sort of accidentally kicked that dog, and that dog rolled all the way down the steps.
Well, those steps were quite a thing too, you know. Remember all the factories that I knew, the box room was way up in the upper level, and you had to go down to the factory where the pulleys were at, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where the factory was built into the hill.
Another thing, that cheese factory, when we first moved out there, was overrun with snakes.
Oh, yeah.
Big, long, spotted adders. And they were just all over the place. They crawled across the screen door on the outside, and one time we had 2 garbage cans sitting in the packing room just outside the kitchen door. And I walked out there and threw something in the garbage can, and about 5 minutes later I walked out here and there were 2 snake skins, just the skins. So God knows if they were there when I walked out there the first time. And I can remember, you pulled the cheese out in the cellar one day and there was a snake on it, and it's a good thing your dad was there because he was gone.
Yeah.
All right.
Then I'll never forget, get it all messed up here, but I'll never forget the time, remember you took the kids down and it was a snowing.
Well, we stop for a minute here, and then the break, we'll go into that, all right?
He taught you how to drive,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still married, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Supposes we ever came to divorce.
Johnny says about the ones who didn't drive, and my mother drove him, let's see,
Wow.
1917, she learned how to drive.
Well, you know.
Yeah, I know,
Of course, my mother could change the tire and do
but my
anything.
neighbor right across the street doesn't drive either.
Yeah. When she was learning how to drive.
We're gonna take a little, I'm gonna turn this over here and we'll do a little more here.
You're gonna tell the time I buried the car.
I've got about 15 minutes left on here, John.
Yeah, as you were saying,
Well,
Okay.
one of the things that probably brought us closer to divorce than anything ever was, well, first of all, when it snowed in Jordan Township, we lived in the hills, and when it snowed, it really got bad. And I was at work that afternoon, and it was starting to get bad. And John was out on the milk route with the kids in the bulk truck with him. And of course there was plenty of snow on the ground from before, and this was just a particularly bad blizzard type situation. So I started for home, and we had a brand new, 67 Chrysler New Yorker that we had kind of special ordered, and it was like the car, you know. And I was driving that, and I got to the top of the hill above.
cheesemaker wages.
Yeah. I got to the top of the hill above Jordan Lutheran Church and had to make the turn onto our road, and I thought, well, I'm just going to give her hell until I can't go anymore, because I knew I would probably never make it home through the drifts and stuff, and so that's what I did. Well, where I finally ended up was over the hill from our house, about maybe a half of a mile or so, and buried her. So I got out of the car, took the keys. That was my mistake, according to him, and walked home. Well, it was about a half an hour later, and he and 3 snowbound kids come steaming over the hill, walking too. He buried the bulk truck behind me. And if I had left the keys in the car, he could have maybe moved the car so he got the bulk truck around. Well, of course, with the milk on the bulk truck and as cold as it was and everything, we had to worry about the valves freezing. And he told me that I could just call that patrolman and get him over there to plow that, and right now, or I would be divorced. That was it. Believe me, I called him too.
We had to get that milk in, right?
Oh, yeah, you bet.
And it was Bill
Wife is
Stafford.
home, but we gotta get that
Right.
milk in, yeah.
And he did come over, and he plowed out, and I told him the whole story, and he still laughs about that to this day, you know, but anyway.
Well, a lot of them don't realize, you know, what it was back there, you know, I mean, the milk had to be picked up and
Yeah.
you know, you didn't want milk, of course, sometimes you had to make cheese with 3-day milk and even 4-day milk.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then another thing too, the first few years that we lived out there in the wintertime, we did make cheese every other day. We darn near starved to death for money because we made cheese every other day. The farmers, they just didn't milk in the wintertime. They just dried up their cows.
Yeah, I'll never forget that one summer there, the Hanson factory closed, and we got all of it out from there, and we was making 10 cheese at the time. Of course, we was having a little bit of trouble with the cheese, and of course I asked some old cheesemakers what the problem could be, and tried their system and it just didn't seem to work. So I told her we were going to call up Dr. Roundy. He was at the University of Wisconsin that time. And by golly, he come down and he tested the milk and he says, I'm not using enough starter. He says, you got to use 5 gallons of starter. And we used 5 gallons of starter and the cheese come out perfect. And I used to go,
gallons?
yes, sirree. I used to go around and tell
One gallon?
yes, sirree. I used to go around and tell cheesemakers and that, and they said I was crazy. But I said, nope. Dr. Roundy said use 5 gallons of starter, and we did it.
When did you put the starter in? Just as you set it, or?
After we heated it up, we always heat the milk up. Then we throw the starter in and let it set for. We used to leave it set for about 40 minutes. And
40 minutes with 5 gallons of
5
starter?
gallons of starter, and then after that we had perfect cheese.
Is that?
Yeah, I'll never forget Dr. Roundy. Yeah.
Talking about starter, that was another one of the cheesemaker's wife's job in the morning. You just love to be told, you know, the buzzer would ring. You have to go get starter this morning. And so off I'd go. You know, we had, well, who should I get it from this time, you know, because we went either to John Mills
Or Arnold Zunker. Or Ed Schmid. And one time.
Oh, I go over to Wally's too.
Wally's.
Wally Tischer's.
Where was this Hanson factory?
Well, that was between Wyoto and Browntown too, but that was
On M.
Oh, okay, that's right.
that was on M there, yeah.
That's where Herman Notter made.
Herman Notter made cheese
Yeah,
there.
I know where it's at now.
Yeah, I'll never forget that Rudy Wilborn was a cheese
And
maker.
you were where right then? Where were you making cheese?
Well, we were on the Gutzmer factory, and that was just off of County Y.
Down here, right?
Well, no, Woodford.
Woodford.
Between
All right,
Woodford and
okay.
Browntown.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Rudy Wilborn.
Yeah, Rudy Wilborn, he was used to be an old cheesemaker there at the Gutzmer factory. Then Burnell McGuire had bought Rudy Wilborn out. But I can remember farmers staying and I used to go down to Ray Benz. Ray Benz used to cut hair down in Browntown. Used to go down there and get a haircut for 50 cents. And Ray I used to tell me, he says, John, he says, I'll never forget Rudy Wilborn. He used to come down and used to have a few brandies. One day he had too many brandies and he had that little creek running through down there by the gas station down to Browntown. And of course Rudy drove his car into the creek and he got out and he said, Jesus Christ, Ray, he says, I'm drowning. And he's only standing in a little bit of water. And Ray and the farmers used to remind me of that. Yeah.
Wilborns are pretty spirited boys, yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right, now you're a director of Historic Monroe Cheesemaking Center, and you attend meetings here regularly. How did you get involved here?
Well, when I heard about it, John, I was enthused about seeing it get going to have some history on cheese making because that was my life for many years, and we got factories closing and older fellows are dying off, and I just got involved because I wanted to see that it was a success, in which I felt you have done a wonderful job on this and preserving the history, and I think everybody ought to be proud of you for the fine job you've done.
Well, it's all of us, and
Yeah.
you don't really want to talk when we do have quite an organization. I've seen that Janine Battler's picture, the Bigfoot artist, recognizing Johnson was the Layfield County Man of the Year. We got Dr. Hine here. They wrote his carving and really very professional groups, group teachers, and who knows what that really put it together. And thank you again both for coming. It's been enjoyable. And about the only thing I have to ask you about, I don't know if I should continue this, but did you do much canned milk hauling?
Oh yeah, we had cans for several years. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple old bachelor farmers that had brown Swiss. And in fact, one of the last days that we made cheese, we did take pictures of the whole cheese making process, you know, just because we wanted to preserve it. But one of the pictures is of Art standing there on his truck ready to put the can in with the Camel cigarette hanging out of his mouth with that much ash on it at least, you know. But they were just, you know,
Yeah, unfortunately, most of our patrons are deceased. You know, just one of them unfortunate things. And we always had a great group of farmers. You know, really. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming to
Yeah.
preserve this
Yeah,
history,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Now,